Dragon's Dogma, a third-person fantasy action game that's definitely in my top 10, and let me tell you why. Seriously, this game never got the attention it deserves, so let's take a look and see just what makes this game so great.
Yeah, boy!
Let me say that I'm not going to cover the story of this game, aside from the opening. It's something that you should experience for yourself. Also, I know that this game is the Dark Arisen version of the game, but I'm not gonna say that every time, and this version has pretty much replaced the original. So after character creation, you wake up one morning just like every other morning. Absolutely nothing out of the ordinary will happen today. Nah, crazy talk. You do the normal stuff, meet your childhood friend Kina, hear the local authorities clamoring on about stuff, a dragon attacks... Oh yeah, a dragon attacks your fishing village. No! Of course, you're the one with the stones to take this thing head on, right? Well, yeah, but it smacks you down pretty easily. But here's where it gets interesting. The dragon takes your heart right out of your chest. But you live.
키페리지 쿠르쿠르 베리베리 동프 나이스 나이스.
This makes you an Arisen, someone who can't die from old age or sickness. But you want your heart back, right? I mean, you're not some cringy nihilist that thinks that nothing matters. So of course you're gonna go on a quest to get back what's yours.
These are my machines!
But how are you going to kill the nasty nasties along the way? Well, you'll have to pick a vocation, of course. Vocations are the classes that you can play as, and they all have their strengths and weaknesses. To begin, you'll only have access to the 3 basic vocations. Basic is in no way bad though, as these 3 starter classes can tear things up and are tons of fun. Fighter is your classic sword and board class. Dragon's Dogma takes shields, generally a piece of kit that just hangs off your character and provides stat buffs, into an actual fun mechanic where you can just say no to damage. Blocking will negate all damage, and give the fighter some serious staying power.
You cannot beat me!
Now, not every attack can be blocked, especially against huge enemies, but that's why the fighter has other skills. I won't go over every skill for every class, but here are just some of the interesting ones. Symbol Attack lets you knock down an enemy's guard, exposing them to other attacks. Launch Board lets the fighter throw allies high into the air to attack flying targets or reach weak points. Sheltered Assault allows you to keep your guard up while attacking, but it doesn't protect behind you, and you can't move while doing it. Shield Drum gives you tanking abilities by drawing in the aggro of nearby enemies. But the fighter is more than just a shield. They're smarter than Captain America. They also have a sword. Who doesn't love swords? If you don't, then you need to reevaluate your choices that led you down that path.
My disappointment is immeasurable.
The fighter's attacks make them more than just a tank. Their sword skills let them dish out damage at a rate that puts other games' shield bearers to shame. Let's have a look at some of their skills. Burst Strike lets you close the distance quickly and deliver a powerful stab. Not only that, but you can use this skill in quick succession multiple times to inflict stun lock and eventually knockdown on things up to medium-sized. The skill is useful in so many scenarios, and is one you can fall back on most of the time. Antler Toss lets you throw small to medium-sized targets into the air, leaving them vulnerable when they land.
Help!
But on bigger enemies, you'll hit them multiple times instead. This can make knocking them down a breeze, or hit weak points more than once for massive damage. But if you want to go for the big bucks, then you'll want Dragon's Maw. Just like how dragons are the most awesome of mythical creatures, this is the most awesome skill that Fighter has. You'll attack everywhere around you in a relatively wide AoE, dealing significant damage. all while being completely invulnerable. Yeah, you heard that right. Invulnerable. Immune to damage. Indestructible. This skill does use up a lot of stamina though, but you'll get so much out of this skill that I never run fighter without it. There's just this unique sort of dopamine rush of blasting off with this skill when you're surrounded by enemies and watching them all get shredded.
Whew. Good thing I'm indestructible.
But maybe fighter's not your thing. Maybe you want something with style. Well, Strider's got you covered. Strider is incredibly versatile, with dual daggers for up-close encounters, and a short bow to attack from range. There aren't many situations that a Strider can't handle. They can also unlock the ability to double jump, making getting around much easier. Some of Strider's coolest dagger skills are Helm Splitter, which lets you spin like a Beyblade and slice up anything dumb enough to stand in your way.
Oh, that's a lot of damage!
Ensnare is what you'll use to live out your dreams of being Spider-Man, casting out cords to leave enemies helpless. 100 Kisses lets you deliver dozens of cuts to anything close to you, and is one of the best skills to use while climbing a giant enemy. Oh yeah, one of the most satisfying things about this game's combat is that you can grab onto and climb giant enemies. This lets you get to their weak points directly, and no class climbs faster than the Strider. In most games, you'll just sit there slapping away at something's ankles until it dies. Here, combat is so much more engaging.
I'll take your entire stock!
But range won't keep your enemies safe, as you've still got a short bow. You can loose 5 arrows at once with 5-fold flurry, which deletes chunks of health bars when you blast away at a weak spot. Downpour Volley gives you some AoE potential by raining down arrows in a specific area, and Pentad Shot lets your bow function like a shotgun, shooting out 5 arrows in a wedge shape. The last of the 3 basic vocations is Mage. So, you want a little more magic in your life, huh? Well, Mage has that in spades. The Mage is mostly a support class, capable of cleansing, healing, and buffing. They can cast Anodyne, which heals any party members or friendly NPCs that enter its field.
Heroes never die.
Spell Screen enhances the defenses of party members that enter its radius, making it almost impossible to stagger or knock you down, which can be really helpful in many scenarios. Halidom clears most negative effects from party members, saving you from carrying curatives. And lastly, the Mage can enchant party members' weapons with any element, capitalizing on enemy weaknesses. But mages aren't just stat boosters. They can put the hurt on just like everyone else. With skills like Ingle, Levin, and Frigor, they can deal out elemental damage, and Grapnel can stop smaller enemies from moving, and slow giant ones to a crawl. Brontide even lets you cast a whip of lightning. What else gives you that kind of awesome? But did you think that these were all that the game had to offer you? No, sir or madam. These are just the tip of the iceberg. Once you reach level 10, you'll get access to the advanced and hybrid vocations. Warrior is the counterpart to Fighter, and they forego defense in favor of swinging around really big swords and hammers. If I have to give my honest opinion though, Warrior is my least favorite class. That doesn't mean it's bad, however. Just finicky.
Hey guys, 2 quick questions. Number 1, what the am I looking at? Number 2, can you stop? Can we not do this? For 5 seconds? For 5 seconds!
Firstly, most of Warrior's attacks are slow. They hit like a freight train, but they're really slow. Your most consistent form of immediate damage is a jumping light attack. They also don't have a way to avoid damage, like the fighter's shield or a dagger class's dodge roll. Instead, they just have to either eat the damage with their high health and armor, or try and jump or sprint out of the way. What's more, they only have 3 skill slots as opposed to every other class's 6, and most of their skills involve charging up. On the flip side though, they can do some of the highest damage in the game. Arc of Might is a lot like the Spartan laser from Halo. You have to charge it up for an extended period, but once you unleash it, it'll wallop whatever it hits with insane force.
Pow!
Act of Vengeance is the come at me bro skill, where you just stand in one place and charge up an attack. The damage you take during it amplifies its strength, so you can stock up on some healing items and dare enemies to attack you at their peril. Exodus Slash lets you back up from incoming attacks and grants you iframes during its initial strike, then lets you combo into that with 2 quick strikes. Seeing as you don't have a reliable way to avoid getting slapped around, this is a great skill to have. Warrior is for those who've played this game and want a bit of an extra challenge. If you know what you're doing with Warrior, you'll smack around everything just fine, and there are Warrior mains out there to prove it. For beginners though, it might be a little frustrating.
Bruh.
Ranger is Strider's counterpart, and this class gives up some of Strider's close range capabilities to gain the title of Long Range Expert. Nobody in the game can deal damage from a safe distance like a Ranger. Equipped with a longbow, they're your marksman class. They still have access to 100 kisses though, so grappling enemies is still more than a viable option if you're up for it. Deathly Arrow is a charge-up shot that is very accurate and very deadly. Shoot it into an enemy's weak spot and watch its health bars drop. Tenfold Flurry is like Strider's Fivefold Flurry, but more, and is great for using in close range when something thinks that it can come at you just because you're an archer. But the big money is all in Great Gamble. Here, you use all of your available stamina in one attack, where you can steer your arrow into the target for some of the highest damage in the game. Even the dragon himself and the final boss of Bitterblack Island can't shrug off this skill. Then there's Sorcerer. While Mage had a lot of buffs and cleanses, Sorcerer is what you'll want for the big spectacle. Sorcerer isn't meant as a DPS class. You'll charge up a big spell, then watch as everything dies. Geisel lets you conjure giant ice spikes to stab your targets. Fulmination electrocutes anything that gets close to you. Seism creates an earthquake to smash anything in your path. Belied summons freaking meteors to slam into your foes. And Maelstrom creates a tornado of darkness to wreck everything in the area. Yeah, Sorcerer's pretty cool. But what if these still don't catch your eye? What if you want to cross-class? Well, then I've got good news for you. The final 3 classes are the hybrid vocations, which combine elements from 2 of the other classes into one devastating package. Mystic Knight combines elements from Fighter and Mage, and they can wield either a sword or mace alongside a magic shield, or even use a staff if you feel like it. But what makes this class unique? Well, it's not just a hodgepodge of skills from Fighter and Mage slapped together. Perfect blocks are useful for fighters, but Mystic Knights can imbue their shields with any element of their choosing, and when you block just as you're about to be hit, you'll counter with a powerful elemental attack. This covers one of Fighter's weaknesses of not being able to reliably use elemental abilities. Not only that, but Mystic Knights can enchant the whole party's weapons at once. Mages have to do this one at a time. The downside is that Mystic Knight's enchantments don't last as long. But when you want to pop off some enchantments before or even during a fight, this can really save you some headache. But Mystic Knights can also cast Great Cannon, which conjures an orb that will generate magic attacks that seek out enemies when you hit it. It will also take on the element you've enchanted your weapon with if you've done so that's another bonus. You can even cast this spell several times close together to generate even more attacks to annihilate targets at range.
Milk you.
Or you can cast Stone Forest, which generates pillars of fire, misleading name if I'm honest, that deal immense damage and knock up to anything close to you. This class is incredibly versatile, and it's my second favorite. There isn't much you can't do with Mystic Knight. But if you want some awesome, wacky, and powerful skills, then look no further than Magic Archer. Yes, Archer plus Magic. A combination of Strider and Mage, this class can equip the Magic Bow, and with it, you can do some zany junk. The Magic Bow functions differently from a normal bow, as it locks onto specific enemies or parts of giant enemies. This makes aiming much easier, but it can sometimes be more difficult to hit something specific that the game can't target on its own. Ricochet Hunter shoots out bolts of lightning that bounce off surfaces to hit enemies multiple times. Use this in enclosed areas to just delete even some of the most powerful enemies, as they'll simply get blasted with more lightning than Emperor Palpatine could dish out. Hunter Bolt turns you into a SAM missile battery, shooting out holy arrows that seek out enemies that you've targeted during its charge up. You can even target various parts of larger enemies to stack the damage. Sixfold Bolt blasts an enemy with ice and is a reliable go-to in most situations. Its damage is nothing to scoff at, and its range is significant. But you've got more than just that. You've also got your daggers, and this is where things get interesting. Have you ever been so mad that you want to light yourself on fire and then give someone you don't like a hug? Well, with Immolation, you can do exactly that. You'll deal damage over time to yourself while the skill is active, but you'll deal much more constant damage to any enemy that you stand next to or climb. You can even combine this with 100 Kisses to do even more damage. Sunflare lets you leap into the air and slam down, dealing fire damage and knockback to anything close to you. You can also use it multiple times in quick succession to blast apart anything that stands in your way, and is a go-to skill of mine. Senshin lets you create an orb of light that will move forward, damaging any enemy it hits and giving a chance to heal you as well, making it incredibly useful. Enemies can block it, but the skill will pass through them and start hitting them from behind, thus negating their block. Magic Archer's combination of dagger skills for up-close combat, magic, and ranged attacks make it so that there's very little you can't do, and it's my personal favorite class. The final class is Assassin, which combines elements of Fighter and Strider. At first glance, it might not seem as unique as the previous two hybrid vocations, but that's where you'd be wrong. Assassins can equip swords, shields, daggers, or shortbows, making them the most versatile physical weapon class in the game. Windmill Slash lets you carve through enemies like a lawnmower as you slowly advance and twirl your blade, hitting many times in quick succession. Dire Gouge is similar to 100 Kisses, as you thrust your sword into an enemy that you're climbing and shred it while twisting the blade. Masterful Kill lets you counter an attack by hopping onto an enemy and cutting it open like a rabid mongoose.
I am the danger.
Skewer Dart lets your arrow pass through multiple targets, hitting anything in its path. And if you're feeling adventurous, then Showdown boosts your strength while decreasing your defenses, letting you go berserk. All of these vocations are good, so no matter which one you pick, you'll have fun. Your stats will increase depending on which vocation you're playing as when you level up, and they'll increase based on what that class utilizes. This isn't the be-all end-all, but if you play as a magic class for most of your 200 levels, then you may find that you aren't quite as strong with physical classes if you switch to one later. You can also unlock augments for each class that you can then equip to your character no matter which vocation you switch to. So play as a few of them to mix and match these to make yourself even stronger. But despite this being a single-player game, you won't be going it alone. No, you'll get your own pawn to follow you and help you in battle. You can customize your pawn just like you can your character in character creation, and they can be any vocation, except for the hybrid ones, unfortunately.
Why?
Now, when you first create your pawn, they'll be pretty dumb. They'll level up with you, and as such will be weak just like you are at the beginning. Their stats won't be high, they won't understand enemy weaknesses, and they'll eat attacks like it's breakfast. But level them up, and they'll learn and develop just like you will. By level 200, your pawn will be a force to be reckoned with, whether it's tanking, damage dealing, or using magic. I've taken multiple pawns from level 1 to 200, and if you're like me, you'll feel proud of how they've developed. You can also recruit up to 2 other players' pawns, either from a rift stone or by finding them on the road. Other players can also recruit your pawn, and doing so will earn you rift crystals based on how much that player used them. Rift crystals can be used to recruit pawns that are a higher level than you, or for purifying gear on Bitter Black Isle, which is the strongest in the game. Enemies will also drop rift crystals, so your success doesn't depend on other people. Just keep in mind that you'll want to vary your party composition. Certain enemies are weak to magic, while others can only be hurt by physical attacks, and sometimes you'll need to hit targets from range. Mix up which vocations are in your group, and you'll be ready to deal with whatever comes your way. But the Dukedom of Granzus is a big place. Normally, you'll have to run from place to place, and not everyone likes that sort of thing. That's why you can either find or buy port crystals, which you can place outside in most areas, and then fast travel to them with your Eternal Fairy Stone. The Eternal one didn't exist in the original Dragon's Dogma, just single-use ones, so I'm thankful that the devs added it into the re-release. You can place up to 10 port crystals down, but you likely won't need that many. But another part of the main quest will involve you having a romance interest. This isn't optional, as it's required for the story.
Don't let your kids watch it!
If you don't deliberately select one, then the game will pick the character that you've interacted with the most. Using the Arisen's bond will help you select the person you want the most, though.
I would be joyed to wear it as a remembrance of a dear friend.
Mercedes is the best girl here, and I won't stand for any slander saying otherwise.
Else I shall wash my honor clean in your blood!
But once you've gotten the hang of everything in Granzus, and you're looking for a new challenge, what do? Well, that's when you go to a special place called Bitter Black Isle. This was the main edition added in Dark Arisen, and it's designed for higher leveled and experienced players. I wouldn't recommend going to this area before level 50, but if you've got the guts, then you do you. Enemies here are stronger, have new moves, and are much more punishing than those found in the base game. There are advanced forms of the normal game's enemies, and entirely new ones, like Death himself. But the rewards here are the best in the game. You can find or earn some, but most will need to be purified by Ulra, the woman who takes you here. You'll find cursed items that she can turn into the ones that you can use, and they come in a few categories. They'll come in levels 1 to 3, with 3 being the least common and strongest. Armor and weapons are self-explanatory. Stuff to hit things with and to protect yourself. Purifying gear will grant you rings that will improve 2 skills of a specific class, taking them to a more powerful version that can only be used by equipping that ring. Novelties are a mixed bag. You can get usable items, equipment, or even scrolls that will unlock augments that can't be acquired any other way. There's really a wide variety of stuff you can get from these, so if you've got some rift crystals to spare, try purifying a few. So, onto the scoring. Objectively, this game gets an 8 from me. Bugs are really rare, and the balance of the vocations and monsters is tight, with very few instances where you'll be left helpless against a specific foe. Having experienced pawns alongside you make you even more formidable. The storytelling can be a little difficult to follow at times, but it'll become clear by the end. The graphics can also glitch out sometimes, like my Abyssnial armor set looking like rubbish in cutscenes randomly, or faces reverting to low res at certain angles.
Holy Jesus. What is that? What the f is that?
Subjectively, I'm giving this a 10. There's a reason that this game is in my top 5. Almost every class is fun to play for different reasons, and the combat has a unique feel that's hard to come by these days, with each class having drastically different options to stomp enemies. The language used isn't medieval, but it's much closer to it than how we speak in modern times, which is so much better for immersion than things like Game of Thrones spamming modern slang in something where it has no place being.
Concern me not one whit. Now legends. Legends stoke up the masses. If Duke Edmund were to best a second dragon, Francis would take the Ascendant. But her neighbors ill want the giant looming at their borders, am I wrong?
Gran Soren is also so much closer to what a real medieval city would look like. It's obvious that the devs did their homework and were inspired by real historical sites. It's not perfect, but it's much more realistic than what you'd normally see. Also, devs, take note. This is how you do a dragon battle. It isn't some cheesy spectacle culminating in beating its ankle calluses. This is a real battle.
The hour for turning back is past. The world will have its answer. You or me. Death or life beyond. If you would gain aught, give your all to here and now. Such is the contest you have chosen.
This game's a decade old, so you can pick it up for pretty cheap these days, and it's worth every penny. It wasn't some incomplete mess that we get now where the devs just push something out and then maybe patch it later. You'll get everything you pay for and more with this game. As a wise man once said, their masterworks all, you can't go wrong. If you found this video enjoyable or informative, then feel free to leave a like if you're so inclined, and subscribe to see more. And may you all have a weapon in each hand.